everyone, this is Marco and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well and that you had a fabulous spooky Halloween. I know I did. We made cupcakes and cookies and watched all sort of scary stuff. It was lovely. Anyway, who's ready for some painting today? Yes, you are! I have my 3D printed models of the Spinosaurs on my Etsy store right now. So, you can consider this video as a bit of a tutorial. You can follow step by step everything I'm doing so you can paint your own Spinosaur. Link is in the description. Now you could consider this video as somewhat of a continuation from the Spinosaurus sculpting and painting video I did some time ago, probably about 2 weeks ago, something like that, where I showed you how I sculpted from scratch the Spinosaurus from Rebirth and painted it as one of those 4 Spinosaur variants. And yes, there's 4, I know there's some confusion, but there's definitely 4. I mean, I watched the film, and here they are, these are the 4 variants. I have so far painted the very first one on the top, which is, in the fans' headcanon, called Hunter. I know, it's a fan name, it's not official. I don't really approve of these, especially back-naming dinosaurs that appeared in other films. I'm looking at you, Snock. Oh god, the cringe. But regardless of how I feel about it, naming these 4 Spinosaurs from Rebirth is actually really handy to help us differentiate between those design variants. But anyway, I think we should take a look at those variants and properly try and identify them. So this image right here is what started it all. Someone did a collage of these 3 different images, which were created early on in the marketing stage of the film. Whether the designers used AI for this is another subject for another time, but yeah, someone in the fandom made a collection of these 3 renders, put them together, and gave them some names. These 3 Spinosaurs portray 3 different variants. We can see that with the designs and the colors on the sail. The one in the middle has a dark sail with vertical thin yellow stripes, and the fans called this one Hunter. The one on the right is pretty much the opposite. It's got a yellow sail with thin, dark vertical stripes, and they called this one Rune. The one on the left has got a yellow sail and dark, wavy horizontal stripes this time, and they called this one Striper. Now where's the 4th one? Well, we'll get to that later. As we can see, they don't really have the final designs of the dinosaurs that appear in the film, as the crest in the center of the head is missing, and some of the stripes are a little bit different. Especially with Hunter right here, in the early designs you can see that the sail has sort of a yellow border to it, but in the final one, that's missing. Now the fandom assumed that there were only 3 Spinosaurs, because in the first trailer we only get to see 3 of them attacking the boat. And this is when the fandom came up with the 3 names, based on those 3 Spinosaurs with those 3 separate designs. In the film there's definitely 4 of them though. There's one extra one. Let's have a look at the ones that attack the boat first. Here's Hunter. There's Striper. That one's Rune. I mean, most of the time there's 3 of them that attack the boat, but in some shots there's a 4th one right there, which is the same design variant as the one on the beach. And this one looks pretty much exactly the same as Striper. So you're probably telling yourself, but Marco, they probably just reused one of those 3 Spinosaur designs and that's it. Well, I reply, if you look closely at the Spinosaur that looks like Striper that is attacking the boat, it's got a chunk of the sail missing. It's like torn right there. And the Striper on the beach has got a completely intact sail. So it's definitely a different variant. And this is where some fans have come up with a 4th name, and that name is Sobek, which is a great name, and it's a reference to a real-life fossil, which is one of the stars of the latest Walking with Dinosaurs show by the BBC. But we won't get into that, as it's a little bit of a sore point for me. Thanks, BBC. I'll never forget what you did to me. Just joking, I'm completely over it. Not. If you've seen a particular live stream of mine, you know what I mean. Anyway, going back to those Spinosaurs, there is a specific book that I find really fascinating. This one right here, which I'll be putting my dirty, grubby little hands on very soon, thanks to Rod's random work. That was me rubbing my hands together, just to clarify. And it's a great book because it's kind of like a style guide. It shows you every single design, maquettes and renders and all of all the dinosaurs from the Jurassic franchise so far, including these new Spinosaurs. Someone shared this picture right here, which includes those designs. But if we take a look, you can only see 3 Spinosaurs right there. Hunter and Rune look absolutely fine, but then there's Striper right there, and it doesn't have a notch in the sail. So it's safe to assume that the designers made these 3 main designs, and then made a 4th one with a notch in its sail as a variant. But since Hunter, Striper, and Rune are all considered a trio in the fandom, we'll just consider those 3 Spinosaurs that attack the boat as those 3. And the extra one is going to be Sobek. Now, I don't know if it's just me or something, but in this picture right here of Sobek on the beach, his sail looks a little bit more orange than yellow. And I kind of would like to portray that subtle difference into my Spinosaurs when I paint them. So I duplicated that render of Striper right there and made its sail a tad more orange. Just so once we've painted all the Spinosaurs, we can still kind of tell them apart a bit better. And they'll definitely look a little bit nicer on the shelf with a bit more color variation, while generally still remaining screen accurate. Now I hope this has all cleared up some confusion about these designs. Now we've already painted Hunter, although I based it on these renders and you can't really see all of it. You know, you can't see the back of its leg and the back of the tail or whatever. And these renders weren't around when I painted it. And I missed a couple of details, including these very faint stripes behind the leg. So I'll be adding those as we go along. But now I think we should start painting Striper, the one with the notch on its sail. Now, about the notch and sail, I actually forgot to put it in until I was halfway through painting, so you'll see me fix that later on. If you want to see how I sculpted the Spinosaur from scratch, I really recommend you go back and watch the Hunter video, which includes footage of me printing the thing as well. So go back and watch that if you don't want to miss out. Now I'm going to show you how to paint Striper. Sit back and relax, and I hope you enjoy the video. So this Spinosaur consists mainly of 2 base colors. Yellow, which is much lighter, and this sort of grey-brown thing, which is much darker. We'll be applying the lighter color first, as it just makes sense, you know. It's much easier to cover the yellow with a darker color than the other way round. Please never use a lighter base color over a dark one because you'll be painting it for the rest of the day, adding 16 coats or something like that. Or you'll start going crazy like me. So I grabbed this primary yellow, I mixed in some white just to thicken the color up a bit, and a little bit of red just to warm it up a tiny bit. And I covered the whole dorsal area of the figure. All of the sail, the top part of the tail, and the top part of the neck. I did it on both sides, obviously, and then I did another 4 or 5 coats just to make sure the yellow was nice and bright. Then I mixed some orange and applied it sporadically over the yellow just to add a little bit of color variation. Then I mixed this dark brown grey thing. It's got a little bit of everything in there, minus blue I think, but it kind of reminds me a bit of the color of tree bark, where you can't really pinpoint exactly what color it is. It just looks dirty in general. Once it's all mixed, I applied it over the bottom half of the figure, making sure I don't spill out too much over the yellow. But by looking at the reference, we can tell that the brown grey color is supposed to reach the very edge of where the sail starts. And once we're happy and before the paint is dried, I used a wet paintbrush to blend in all the edges, so it doesn't look harsh, and it generally looks a lot more organic. And of course, I did the same thing on the other side too. At this point, I decided to rectify a little bit of the paintwork I did on Hunter with this color. I thought the base color was a bit too green before, so I just dry brushed a bit of this browner gray one over it, and it certainly helped. Next, I added a little bit of black into that gray-brown mix to paint the stripes. And paying very close attention to the reference material, I tried to replicate the patterns of the stripes onto the sail and then eventually on the tail. There's 3 main stripes on the sail, one on the top, one in the middle, and one that connects the body to the sail. Using the wet paintbrush, I blended in the edges a bit to make it a bit less harsh and to make it look a bit more organic. The tail has about 5 to 6 sort of triangular patterns, with the points pointing down. Well, they're kind of skewed a little bit to the side. And then I repeated the whole thing on the other side too. It was here I realized that I was supposed to add a notch, so I grabbed my knife and cut it out, making sure I was looking at all the reference material to get it right. I then used a bit of yellow and a bit of that dark grey, brown, black thing to paint in any patches that needed painting in. Then I mixed this sort of off-white for the counter shading and applied it over the bottom half of the figure, on the belly, on the bottom of the neck, and on the bottom of the tail too. And I blended everything in with a wet paintbrush. I used that same color to add some very faint sort of stripes on the back of the leg, which, as mentioned earlier, is a detail that I completely missed while painting Hunter. But before I get to fixing it, I'm quickly adding a bit of yellow along the edges of the counter shading, and a little bit on the stripes on the legs too. And this is where I fixed Hunter. I added the stripes and blended them in with that yellow. I added a little bit of that off-white and yellow around the lip line too. After making sure the paint was completely dry on Striper, I added a nice black wash over the underside, which helps tone down a bit of the brightness of the counter shading while also bringing out a little bit of that scale detail. Once it was completely dry, I mixed this sort of orangey brown color and dry brushed it over some parts of the figure. A bit on the torso, on the legs, on the arms, and a bit on the tail. Then I mixed this sort of pinky light grey color and dry brushed it over the whole figure. This helps bring out a lot of that scale detail and a lot of those shapes, especially in the face area. With some quite pale yellow, I painted in the eyes. I had to hold my breath. This step is very finicky, but I think I nailed it. And then with some off-white, I painted in every single tooth. Again, I had to hold my breath because this could get very messy if you're not careful. Finally, with some black, I painted in the pupils in the eyes. Again, I held my breath. Thankfully, I nailed it on my first try, yes! And then I painted the claws, yes, including the dew claws. So all that's left now are the finishing touches. We'll be applying some of this clear lacquer right here, and then some lovely gloss varnish on the claws, on the eyes, and a little bit in the nostrils too, as well as the teeth. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the finished Striper the Spinosaurus from Jurassic World Rebirth. Now, I quite like this Spinosaur design in general, but there's something about this specific one that is quite interesting because it has horizontal stripes as opposed to the vertical stripes that we see on every other variant. So this one's quite unique, especially because of that and that notch in the sail too. I tried to follow the reference material as closely as I could, and using those renders really helped. If you want to attempt this too, again, I recommend you get one of my models from my Etsy, and you can print out a screenshot of those renders that I prepared right at the beginning of the video. If you do this, I'd love to see your version. Please tag me on Instagram or use my hashtag MarcoMakesDinos. Now for the next videos, I have a bunch of reviews prepared or in the works, but then we'll be continuing these Spinosaurs and painting all of the variants. So stay tuned. If you like the video, please consider leaving a like, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment and let me know what you think about my Spinosaurus. Thank you so very much for watching. Stay safe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye bye.
I would like to give a massive thank you to all of my Patreons. Seriously guys, your support really does mean the world to me, as it helps me do what I love for you. You help me buy materials, and most of all, you give me a helping hand with improving the quality of the content of my videos. Even if it's just a small donation, every little helps.